How every morning starts. Cup of coffee. Okay, well, those of you who have been following along, I had a little bit of an issue with the front end of this thing. It seems that the dust cap here is interfering with the inner washer. The washer is just a hair too big in diameter, so that when I tighten down the dust cap, the lip where the threads are actually interfere with the washer. So that being said, away we go also to the rear, where the dust seal was not really touching the sealing surface. Another note, you can see that one day outside in the dew here and everything starts to surface rust. So Willwood finally listened to me and sent me a dry fit entire hub assembly and spindle. Now that spindle assembly comes with one difference. That difference, that washer is a smaller diameter. That's it. They sent all of this stuff so that it wouldn't interfere with the cap, and it was just a smaller washer. Now they sent both sets of washers, and there's the only difference. So here we go. Well, good morning, everybody. Let's make a plan and start into this thing. Today I'm going to start mocking up the tilt front end. And this one's going to be a little bit different than what you normally see because I'm keeping the front bumper and the grill assembly. Now the reason I'm doing that is because, get this thing to turn. If I take the front bumper off, it takes away from the car in this particular look. It's got a look to the front of it, which is pretty unique. It's almost like the grill has teeth, but it's smiling. I don't know how to explain it. But what I'm going to do to cut this lip off right here, which is just a skirt that goes behind the sides of the grill. It kind of directs air toward the radiator, but that's insignificant. It doesn't matter. We're going to an aluminum radiator with fans. Much better cooling system. Much more refined than the old Hemi that was in it. So when doing that, this flat surface can come right over the grill, and then it's going to tilt up. So it's going to be a two-piece system. It's got to slide forward, and it's got to tilt up. So what I've come up with for that, it's probably overkill, but this is a slider, reasonably inexpensive. I don't know if you can see in there, it's got ball bearings. So it will very easily take the weight. There's two of them. It'll take the weight of the front end and allow it to move forward and back quite easily. So it'll be sliding forward to here. These bearings will be mounted to a plate with a hinge, and then that hinged part will open up. So it'll slide forward past the grill and open up. Seems like a real slick way to do it. But we're going to start figuring out the geometry. Now, of course, both sides have to be identical. So we need to make sure our clearance comes out far enough, that it tilts out far enough. So I have to go from where it is here all the way up to here. Let me redo that just in case you didn't see where I was at. It has to move this whole piece of the fender forward to about here, because when you swing it up, I don't want to cut these fenders. They're in too nice a shape. So I want it to slide forward the proper amount. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on pause for just a second and grab a tape. Okay, we're going to use a very high-tech method of measurement here. We are going to measure from the back to about the firewall. And that tells me it's got to come forward about 15 inches. Then we'll come up here and we will confirm that if I come forward 15 inches, I should have plenty of room to tilt her forward. So there's the basics of the basics. Now I do have plenty of adjustment on the shaft. So if I mount the shaft something like this, I've obviously got a lot more than 15 inches. So then I'll be supporting here as well as across the back so that it doesn't flip and flop. There is a place on the bottom of each fender to easily put a pin in to hold the bottom of the fenders. And I've got plenty of metal because these are not light. Now, as with everything else here, I have no clue of what I'm doing. But my thought is it can pull up a little bit and then roll over. Sounds like it ought to work. But one of the things we have to be careful of is that each side is identical. So in order to do that, we first need to level the frame, confirm that we're pretty close to level, which we should be. She's sitting on the tires right now, and as long as the air pressure is the same, should be pretty close. Ooh, watch out for that. So we'll go ahead and check her here. She's in there. And we'll check her up here. It's dead on the money. So, making the assumption, which I hate to do, that the nose is going to sit in the same place both sides, I can go ahead and take a measurement to about here. I do have box tubing. The problem with that being that this is just a hair wider. So I'll have to put a flat tab on the top because this is going to stand like this and this will be on top like this. So I'll just put a little pad on the top. I'll have to squeeze it together a little bit because that way I can get a bolt through it, Allen screw, whatever. So let's get out the porta band, cut a couple pieces of metal. So I didn't want to bore you with measuring and remeasuring and all of that stuff. So what I came up with, yeah, let me see how I can do this, is this. So I've cut it to length, dropped it down, and now all I have to do is put a small plate on top to bolt that to, and we win. And I also made two that are identical. So stand by, and maybe we'll actually start to see some progress in the forward direction instead of the tearing apart direction. Okay, I've gone ahead and mocked up the front brackets. I've got them both, I cut them together so they're both the same. I put a piece on top so that I can put the clamp on there. And now what I'm going to do is tack the back so I can make sure that they are square and parallel so that it will slide forward without binding. I'll get back with you in a minute once I change the battery. Okay, so kind of show you what I got going on here. I welded a piece on there so that I can use that as a support. I did tilt them backwards because that way as it goes forward it would have to over center in order to bend forward. I'm also putting another brace back here. It's not going to sit on top of the shock tower. I actually thought about just welding it to the front of the shock tower, but the metal is so thick and the metal is so thin, it's actually better if I do it the correct way and actually make another setup like this where it'll go to the back, and then I'll run a gusset across so that'll strengthen it going this way. So now you can kind of get an idea of how the front slider is going to work. I've got the lock in place. I'll put another one in the back, make the same style bracket, and then in between here and wherever my stop is here will be my total travel. Now thus far, the way it's set up is I can have a total travel of as much as about 18 inches. And remember my measurement from prior, I need about 15. I'm hoping that that will be plenty. And if not, well, then we got to go back, tear it all back apart and start over. Okay, so now I have my rods parallel. Now I just need to measure this up for the tower that's going at the back. I'm going to do the same thing as the front. So I'm just going to measure to the base of this. And it's about 3 1/4. So I'll make a couple of those. And this will show you how close it is. That's pretty darn straight. So we'll make 2 of those. I'll drill them and tap them, same as the fronts. And get that situated, then we can go ahead and lock this in place. Start working on the fender pivots, which will really be interesting because I've got to make a bunch of supports and all. And we'll take you along for that trip too. Well, I hope you can see this. But I've got these mounted. I've got them welded in. These are my slides. So they will actually attach, and you can see they're really good ball bearings in there. But even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. So I just got really lucky because I failed to take into consideration radiator mounting of the radiator I already have for this. So I'm going to grab a hold of this and just show you what luck is. Because in between those 2 brackets, this radiator just fits. It literally is a rubber stop away from each side. Now the radiator in this is going to slant about probably like this. The reason for that is to clear everything, and the motor's going to be way back there, so I've got plenty of room. Obviously it'll look ridiculous way up like this, and I can't mount it like the old one which sat down in the hole because this is a much bigger radiator. So it's going to be kind of like a Corvette, something like that, which will work really well. It still sucks and blows. I can put my AC condenser in front of it straight up so that it will have a little airspace in between, which helps your cooling system not work so hard to cool off hot air blowing in the radiator. So that worked out pretty slick. I'm pretty happy with that. So the next step, I've got to go ahead and cut a couple of brackets off the fender. I'm going to set the fender up. So I'll go ahead and put you on time warp or whatever. We'll zoom up a little bit. You get to see how that's all going to happen. And here we go. So I'm going to attempt to get the fender out here, set it on without killing myself or looking stupid. Well, the looking stupid part's easy. It's making shit happen, honey. So now you kind of get an idea how this is all going to happen. I've got to triangulate here, back here, probably here and here, and then have that on a hinge off of these. So the reason I have to triangulate is because, number one, it's a good long span back there. I had a tilt front end on a 67 Firebird that I used to drag race years ago in the 80s. And it had the Jeep kind of hood restraints to hold back the hood down. like those rubber ones. And at about 100 miles an hour, it broke. Thank God the track was flat, because it came up and just rested and blew sparks off of the nose of that Firebird front end. This one, I'm not going to take this chance. So it's got to come forward and then roll up, or it can't flip forward. That one, the whole front end flipped up like you always see on the 55 Chevys and all. So this one has literally got to move forward 14 inches, almost 15, and then swing up. So that's the plan. Much safer. By leaving the front bumper on, and make the car a little bit safer too. It's gonna look silly, it's gonna look like a gasser no matter what I do with that bumper. So I just as soon keep it, because, well, although it's kind of messed up right now, it's pretty cool. Once I get the new one in, well, I have pieces of one that I bought for 200 bucks that I'm gonna put together and make one nice one out of it. So that's about the process for that. I do have the steering box rough mounted right now. I am waiting on the double D piece that goes between the steering column and it. I have the second U-joint. You can see that it's offset just a little bit. The steering wheel on this was over the top of the frame rail, and then the shaft went down alongside it. So it's kind of a goofy setup. But I don't want the steering wheel tilted like they did on some car way back when. So I'm doing a double U-joint, and hopefully that'll work out. So I'm going to continue on, and we'll keep making a little bit of video progress here as we go. My cousin Brian taking care of later important things.